Now, to look at some of the stories making headlines in the Central Africa region, from shifting global energy flows to deepening social unrest and upcoming elections, and to help us unpack what all of these developments mean for the people and governments across the region, we're now joined by our regular commentator on a Thursday, and that's a geopolitical analyst, Aaron Ngambi. Hello, Aaron. I hope you're doing well, my brother.
Well, thank you, Peter. Good morning to you and good morning to our viewers and listeners.
Right. So, recent reports show that India has purchased around 2 million barrels of crude oil from Angola. This is part of a broader strategy, I believe, to diversify away from Russian supplies. What does that tell us about Angola's role in global energy markets, and how might this shift affect other oil producing nations in Central Africa?
Well, this is a major shift. If you speak of Angola, we know that Angola is only second largest oil producer in Africa and Sub-Sahara, of course, next to Nigeria. And the quality of the oil, the crude oil that Angola produces, is actually on demand. It's unlike other oils from crude oils from places like Venezuela and other countries. But just like you mentioned, this is a major shift in the attitude with regards to India and its bilateral relations. What India has done here is very surprising because India is part of the BRICS nations, and India has been championing all these other countries to try to work with the BRICS nations, in terms of establishing an alternative from the Western countries as the global South. Therefore, to see that India wants to almost ditch the oil from Russia and be able to deal with Angola is actually good news for Angola, but also at the same time concerning because they're doing this for not really the right reasons. The reason for this is because they want to stay in good books with the United States of America as well as the European Union, and want to avoid any kind of, sanctions or any kind of backlash from the West. And this is the only reason why India is trying to do this. But of course, this comes to an enormous advantage to Angola and other regional players as well.
I know that this is unfair to ask you, but I'm now curious because India is not having the best of relationships with China. Now, are they not going to upset Russia?
Of course, this is expected. I just don't even imagine how the BRICS nations will be able to hold it together and Russia and China to be able to work well with India. It is true that the relations between India and China haven't been the best, even though we've seen attempts by Modi, the Prime Minister of India, as well as Xi Jinping, the President of the People's Republic of China, to have some sort of cordial engagement publicly to display some sort of tolerance for each other. But the two have been at loggerheads for quite some time now. Now it seems that India just wants to get Russia on the wrong side as well, which won't really work well for BRICS because the whole idea for the BRICS nations and the global South was to offer an alternative and to actually try to diversify away from the Western hegemony from the United States and the European Union and be able to have some sort of a unipolar world where the major powers outside of the West can come together. But India seems to be spoiling it for everyone.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting year, one gets a sense. Let's go to Gabon now, where teachers have been on strike for, what is it, 6 weeks now, bringing schooling to a near standstill in the country. I believe it's about wages and working conditions. What are the deeper social and economic implications, do you think, of what we're seeing here from this prolonged strike?
Well, remember, Peter, that the administration in Gabon is relatively new. Remember that the current president of Gabon came through the barrel of the gun. He came through a coup d'etat and then quickly transitioned to civilian rule. But even with that, he has tried to make almost immediate decisions that seem to give hope that the country is on a different trajectory after having been over a family dynasty for 5 decades or plus. So the issues to do with the teachers striking now and issues to do with the education system per se has been long-standing. I mean, you're talking about salary arrears and other things for the last 10 years, and basically a wage freeze for these teachers. They've never received any increment. Some of them have not been paid for long periods of time. So this is a problem that this administration has inherited, but to their credit, they have already instituted a fast track system where they're going to settle all the arrears and the salaries that they owe and be able to make sure that the teachers can call off this strike. Nonetheless, they have a problem because two of the union leaders for this strike have been arrested. And so this is also something that calls for negotiation and dialogue between the government and the teachers' unions and the associations.
All right, let's go to Congo Brazzaville, a country that we don't speak about a lot in the media. We know that the WHO has its regional head office for Africa there, but elections have been scheduled for March the 15th this year, 2026. And for a lot of Africans who don't know much about Congo Brazzaville, what is the story in terms of these elections? What are the issues? Who are the players? And is it going to be another African election, or could this be one of those truly democratic processes?
We're hoping that this would be a success story from Africa when it comes to elections. We're hoping that it will probably be a different kind of a story to tell at the end of the day. Now, the elections, like you mentioned, will take place on the 15th of March this year. The only problem that I see so far as a red flag is what the government has put out. You know, the statement that actually the campaign period begins on February 28th and it ends on March 12th, and then after that, you have the elections on March 15th. Now, even in places like Uganda, for example, Peter, we did not see a campaign period of just about barely 2 weeks. I think this is a problem. I think that this renders the opposition vulnerable. In Uganda and even other places, you find that the elections, when they took place during the campaign period, they had about 90 days or 3 months or 2 months of campaigns. This at least gives latitude for the opposition to mobilize, to try to find people that can help and participate in that election. But a campaign period of only 2 weeks from the 28th of February to the 12th of March in Congo Brazzaville is very uncomfortable for me because I don't know how the opposition will be able to maneuver. Of course, the ruling party have state machinery. They can get to all the parts of the country without any problems. But this is a disadvantage for for the opposition political parties.
So, does this look like Denis Sassou Nguesso continues?
This looks like the incumbent, yes, President Denis might actually go for another term, and I don't know how he would. He has an edge, you know. You look at logistics, you look at the way that the elections have been set up. For example, you hear that there'll be actually two kind of voting system, two kind of election days. The first one, you're going to have the first round of elections, which would be presidential elections. And the Council of Ministers have convened a body that has a national territory and that will supervise the presidential elections and also the general elections. But on top of that, you're going to have general voting on Sunday on the 15th of March. But prior to that, on the 12th of March, on Thursday, there'll be voting by the security forces. So you have two different dates that are set as election dates for the security forces and for the general public. What does that tell you? That tells you that this can be problematic and can be difficult when it comes to transparency because who's going to observe and monitor effectively the votes by the security forces, and then you tally that with the general elections on the 15th of March. These are things that, for me, looks like the environment might not be conducive for a free and fair election.
And then very briefly, Pope Leo the 14th visiting Equatorial Guinea. Tell us about that. That's his first trip to Africa, I believe.
Yes, so the Republic of the Equatorial Guinea has confirmed. The president and the church met and had a press conference and have confirmed that the Pope will actually be visiting that country very soon. But that is not the only country he'll be going to. We know that he'll also be going to Angola. They've also announced that in Angola. We don't know if there are any other countries on the continent, but this is significant because this will be his first trip to Africa since he became the Pope. So it's a big deal for both the state and also for the Vatican as well.
Fascinating. Aaron, we'll leave it there. Thank you. Always great talking to you. Have a great week ahead, and we'll chat next Thursday.
Thank you for having me, Peter. Have a wonderful day.
That's a geopolitical analyst, Aaron Ngambi, making sense of what's happening in the Central Africa region. And that brings us neatly to 6:30, which means it's time for your news headlines with Onele Nsinsi.